Welcome back to the Ed Show. I got a commentary on air travel coming up in just a few moments. President Obama took to the microphone for the second straight day this afternoon to address the failed airline terror plot.
When our government has information on a known extremist, and that information is not shared and acted upon as it should have been, so that this extremist boards a plane with dangerous explosives that could have cost nearly 300 lives, a systemic failure has occurred, and I consider that totally unacceptable.
We now have pictures of the undergarments that the suspect actually sewed the explosive device into. Some experts are insisting that we implement body screening and even profiling in order to prevent another lapse of security. Joining me now for more on that is former Air Marshal, instructor, and CEO of SCG International, Mr. Jamie Smith, with us tonight. Also with us is former CIA officer Jack Rice. He's joining us tonight as well. Mr. Smith, good to have you on tonight. Air Marshals may not have been able to stop this certain situation, but do you think that they really do play an effective role in a line of defense to keep any kind of mischief happening or a terrorist attack happening on an airliner?
Absolutely, they play a role, Ed. They're the last resort, though. The airport has to have a concentric layer of security, and the air marshal, if they have to get involved, then, as the president alluded to earlier today, there has been a systemic failure because the individual should never have been allowed on the plane in the first place. You don't need the air marshal to get involved. You need to stop them before they ever even get past security and enter in the gate area.
You know, Jamie, the president today was talking about how information was not passed along in the system. It would seem to me that if an air marshal were boarding a plane, and there was somebody on the terror watch list or a person of interest, wouldn't it be good for the sky marshal to know exactly who's on that plane? Wouldn't it be good for the airline pilot to know what the heck is going on, along with the flight attendants? I mean, it appears to me that this has been a major wake-up call, that we got holes all throughout the system. We got a lot of work to do, and the president alluded to the fact that the systems that we've had in place for a long time are pretty much antiquated. What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, the air marshal and the cabin crew, the air marshal specifically, though, needs to have that information. I also have worked at the Central Intelligence Agency, and Jack can speak to this as well. But there has to be an information sharing system in place, and there is. But in this case, it did not function as designed. The marshals have to have the information as to who the suspected questionable people on the aircraft might be. But it really needs, aviation security takes place on the ground. You don't want to have to do it in the air because you're in a tubular environment. There's nowhere to go, and you either win the fight or the plane goes down. So you don't want to get to that point.
Jack Rice, former CIA officer, also with us tonight. The sharing of information. Jack, I thought we rearranged government after the September 11th, 2001 attack on the Twin Towers in Manhattan in this country, because there wasn't enough information sharing, so we had to rearrange government and come up with the Department of Homeland Security and all this great oversight. Lo and behold, look what we've got on our hands. How tough is it for the CIA to do information sharing with other agencies on a need-to-know basis?
Well, see, that's exactly the problem. What we continue to do is to have this sort of Cold War concept of need to know, whereas what we need now is the ability to be able to share that information. I mean, if we think about this particular case, this guy, I mean, what we know now, of course, is he paid cash. Guess what? There's a hint. He buys his ticket in Ghana. How about that one? There's a hint. He only comes on with his carry-on bag. There's a hint. His father says there's a problem. There's the visa. The list goes on and on. There are so many specific instances of intelligence that are simply not shared, not established, not determined, that it makes me wonder how we can do just about anything. The level of incompetence here is pretty extraordinary.
Well, how about Great Britain? Great Britain denied him entry into the country. And you would think that the Brits, which is historically has been probably about our best allies since the country started, that we'd be able to share some information there with the Brits.
Yeah, you would think so.
Go ahead.
No, by the way, I mean, that was part of this, too. If you think about the Brits who actually refused the visa, they actually let U.S. intelligence know that. So they had this information, too. It's just the inability to sort of connect all of this. I mean, what we're seeing right now is a shocking overreaction across the country. What? I can't put a blanket on. If I need to go to the bathroom, I better do it within the last hour. I better not have any carry-ons. All of those things. If you think about what we already have in place, what actually exists, if we simply sat down and said, all right, what do we have? What did we know? We could have stopped this when he was in Nigeria. We could have stopped this in Amsterdam before he's flying over Detroit. I mean, it's amazing.
All right, gentlemen, let's turn to racial profiling, or any kind of profiling if we can. There are members of Congress right now who are bringing up this subject. Here's a couple of them.
I think there are situations like this where we are afraid of being accused of profiling. The fact is, while the overwhelming majority of Muslims are outstanding people, on the other hand, 100% of the Islamic terrorists are Muslims, and that is our main enemy today.
There have been so many complaints about, quote, profiling by the, quote, Islamic civil rights groups that they stopped basically profiling, and that basically led to not putting this guy on to the terrorist watch list.
Peter King, of course, is not alone in his thoughts on racial profiling of any kind. And, of course, Mr. Emerson is a terrorist expert. Gentlemen, where do we stand on this? Mr. Smith, what do you think? Have we gotten to a point where we pull people out of a line because they might look a certain way, or they might be of a certain nationality? What do you think?
Well, profiling is nothing new. You know, we don't want to do profiling based on race or based on ethnicity. Well, you do profiling based on behavior. You know, you do it every day. I do it every day. If I walk down an alley and I see somebody in a dark alley and they look a little suspicious, I change direction. That's profiling. If I see a guy running out of a butcher shop with a bloody axe, you know, I'm going to make a guesstimation right there that guy is either going to be a crazed axe murderer, or perhaps he's the butcher who's coming out to give change to the lady standing to my right. But either way, I'm going to make a guess, and that's profiling. Police officers do it. We all do that. And so what we need to do is apply some common sense to the profiling concept, and you do it based on behavior. You do it based on clothing. You do it based on mannerism. You do it based on tone of voice. You have to put qualified, trained personnel in front of the passengers and not have just a total reliance on technology. But you do have to put some common sense and some intellect into this thing. Put the human
Jack
element
Rice,
in it.
this is no doubt. Jack Rice, this is a political hot potato for the White House. How far does the White House want to go with this kind of line of defense? What do you think?
My response is they push back hard on what Peter King said, what Pete Hoekstra said. I mean, there is no room for racial profiling in this country. Every study that I have seen, I'm a former prosecutor too, every study that I have seen has shown that it's far more effective to follow what it is that people do rather than what they look like. And if we think about it in the broad picture now, let me see if we get this right. If we're going to racially profile, we racially profile everybody across the Middle East. Now we find that this young 23-year-old man from Nigeria, most of Nigeria is Christian, by the way. So I guess what we're going to have to do is include all the people of Africa. But now let's contemplate Al-Qaeda in the Philippines. So now we have to include all the people in Southeast Asia. So now we have about 4 billion people. Look, I think when people make an argument for racial profiling, they're either lazy, they're either arrogant, or frankly, they're racist. This is a foolish idea. And the worst part of it all is that what we're going to do is alienate about 1.5 billion Muslims. We desperately need these people on our side. If we go down that path, we're in a very, very serious problem.
Jack Rice, Jamie Smith, great to have you on tonight. Appreciate your time. Coming up, millions of Americans.